Hello, everybody. Once again, I am Lee McCrafton Jr., aka Zorwatch. I'm Less Than Guru, and for today's trick, tip, etc., for Palladium First Edition or any Palladium game, any game actually, for this one, on what what I would encourage you or support you in is changing things after you've already started a campaign, after you already got your group together and you are advancing in it, and maybe you're listening to this channel and you are, hey, that's an idea, but I've already started a campaign. Or maybe you're doing a D&D campaign or an Earth Dawn campaign or something, and you're like, hey, this is something that I'd like to introduce, but we've already started it. We've already had our session 0, etc. I would still say it's never too late to tweak or add or even take away something in a game as long as it's clearly communicated with your players. And maybe it's a I'm not sure, and get your players' feedback on it. As an example, one of my very first, if not my first video in this series was talking about removing speed as an attribute. And I did that very quickly after the game began. And then I started thinking about physical beauty around the time that I started these videos and why I added physical beauty. And during that, I was like, I don't know if it's worth it now. But then I was thinking about it and I decided to ask my players. And I asked a couple of players outside of the game and was like, hey, this is something that I've been thinking. Is there anything that I'm not thinking about that would cause this to be bad, or do you just not want to do it? And both players were very supportive, agreed with my reasoning for it. And then when the next session was there, I opened it up to everybody and I said, hey guys, physical beauty, is this something that we need or not? And everybody was perfectly fine with getting rid of physical beauty because it doesn't do anything except for that charm and impress. That there's no rules or nothing that says what those percentages mean, how you use those percentages to charm and impress. And the only thing that one of the players remembered, because it happened to him and I didn't think about, is permanent injuries. One of them is called major scarring and it reduces your physical beauty. So it was simply, hey, what if I take this off the chart and I break those percent rolls, that roll for that percent to that percent amongst the other things, and you have a physical beauty. So that got impaired by the permanent injury. So let's look at what that roll was between, and then you roll like a 50-50 chance of it either being what was above it or below it in the percentile. And one of the possible outcomes was nothing, because there is a roll that's like nothing happens. And the player was sure. The player ended up getting a reduction in their movement value, but he didn't mind. It just kind of went with the territory, and he was one that really was against physical beauty as an attribute, because whose beauty are you talking about? An orc's definition of beauty is going to be different from a human's, which is going to be different from an elf. And even if you do the human-centric type thing, which I'm not totally against, but some people might like scars and things like that. And I could see how that could be more of an intimidation than a detraction. It could help intimidate. If you see a guy that has all these battle scars on him, that guy's experienced. That guy, don't want to mess with him. So I removed it. I practiced it, what I preached, decided to go that way, and we're just moving on. What I did do is I took that charm and impress and MA, kind of the replacement, or it got combined to MA, because that's something different. Mental affinity. You had trust and intimidate were the two ways that you could do it. And some of those trust and intimidate, both of them. So what I decided is I took the charm, because charm can be charisma. It can be how you talk to people. If you get people to get on your side and be able to argue a bad argument and win people over, that's something that's nice. Impressing them, intimidation, and trust they're all things that you could do with charisma or mental affinity, that type of thing. So what I decided was that if you got those bonuses at 16 or higher, you could choose for your character which two of those things you used. Whether it was you could trust and intimidate, or you can intimidate and impress. A warrior might want to, be able to intimidate the opponent and impress them with their physical stance and how they stand and carry themselves. You might want to trust and charm and impress. There, you could use any of those. So it was take two, and those kind of define your character. And then, while I don't have those as skills that you can raise, I did include them in skills to be used. And there are various spells that give you bonuses to charm and impress, or give you a flat base of charm and impress, or trust and intimidate in the Palladium games, and those then became a bonus. So you kind of start with a 0, and then if you have an MA bonus to those, you can add it. If you get spells, that would add to it. And I took the species, the races, that had those 4 and 5 dice for the physical beauty. I kind of added those as a bonus to whatever it was. So, like an elf might get it to charm and impress, where a Teufling, my version of the tiefling, the devil kin type bloodline, could be a charm intimidate. You're a little intimidated by their devil, but man, devils are smooth talkers, so maybe they'll be able to charm you or give you that trust. Even though they're a devil, man, what they're saying is really good. So I kind of went through the species and gave them a little bonus to add to it. And we've only done it a couple of sessions, maybe two or three sessions since then. But everybody's been happy with it. And if people start not getting happy with it, they can always provide feedback. You can always change it. You can also say, hey, if anybody is uncomfortable for stating this with everybody else, please contact me. We can get on Discord. If your group is all across the country like me, it was like, hey, pop on the Discord channel. Do you have a couple of minutes to talk about this? If somebody has an issue, they can always talk with me. We can always work things out. And maybe they'll see something that I didn't see, like that physical injury chart. Completely forgot that physical beauty was one of those things that could be lower. But if you wish to add or tweak or change something in your game, whatever game that may be, don't hesitate to at least bring it up to the players, because sometimes the players are thinking the exact same thing that you are and just didn't want to break the system or go against what you've been going against, and would be very happy for it, as long as it's not being a detriment to their character or hurting the play style. And there are times where you might need to nerf something, and that's best to have a one-on-one with the player or players. That characters are going to be directly affected if you're going to change. I personally did that with my Paladin. I've mentioned before, I took the Holy Crusader and the Paladin, and I combined them because I just felt the Paladin and Knight were a little too redundant. The Knight was really, really cool, and the Paladin was just like, if you got a few, like 2 attributes up a little higher, a little bit more, then you were a Paladin. So I took like the spells at level 5, and they had a harming touch ability that I liked, kind of the opposite of a lay on hands. And to begin with, I just kind of had it the same way, but one, it was a bit ambiguous on who and how it would work, and 2, it required you to touch them. So as a Paladin who's usually having at least some type of weapon, probably a shield, definitely a shield in my game because that's what their automatic parry depends on, but the putting away your weapon to touch something and do damage just seemed off. Whenever somebody who is made to be a sword or weapon fighter puts away their weapon, it's kind of like the same reason I changed SDC in armor, is when you have fighters who normally would want to wear heavy armor choose not to wear armor because the penalties or the cost involved becomes too much in their eyes, I went, hey, harming touch doesn't quite fit the view I'm having. Would you mind if I just give you a flat weapon bonus to damage as a your level divided by 2? And then that just adds to any time you hit with a weapon, and we'll call it like harming smite or weapon harm or divine strike or whatever D&D or non-D&D word you wish to use, and the player is fine, and now he can use it on any time he attacks with anything. And it's hasn't been a lot where it's overbalanced things and did super tons of damage and one-shotted things, but as he levels, he sees an increase with it, and it's worked really well. I've been happy with that. So just wanted to say, do not worry about changes happening after a game starts. Just communicate with the players, communicate with the player the player who has a character that might be affected. And if something really big, like, hey, what do you think about dropping this attribute? You can get kind of information for a few of the players that are really invested in the game at first, kind of get feedback off of them. And then once you have that, present it to everybody else, and then tell them, hey, afterwards, if you have any problems that you didn't want to discuss outside or, in the open forum of the whole gaming group, either around the table or everybody showing up on your virtual tabletop, then you can move forward there and have that personal conversation if they want to state what their concerns on. And then you can alleviate concerns. You can realize things that you might not have taken into account and come up with a way of that, or you might come up to the realization of, no, this isn't going to fit. And you get that done before you have to introduce, or before you decide to introduce it into a game, find out that the players don't like it or it flops, and then remove it. Always have open communication with your players. And if it is something, again, at the beginning of the game, you can have that in your session 0. But session 0 isn't the stop when it comes to rules and mechanics, unless you've added something and everybody was really for it and you just want to yank it. But then you and your group and that can talk about that as well in your session 0. Hey, I would like it if things pop up. Can we change or not? If the group says no and you're not a bunch of friends who like each other in real life, maybe you like each other gaming. I'm not necessarily saying it has to be a friendship or like or dislike, but depending on the group you have, why it started, and purposes of that will also allow you to tailor your decisions for your own table, or maybe even that individual table or session. So just something to think about, something that I've used all the time in my Palladium First Edition ever since I decided to try to game master the system to see, was it nostalgia, rose-colored glasses that was making me want to go old school, or was it something that, yeah, I actually really miss this, and is it something that I would like? And it's become yeah, this is something that I really miss, I really enjoy, but I needed to change it from the raw because there were just too many ambiguous things, not clear things, and rules that I just felt we could improve. Having time, decades since the game was released, learning through being a game master, being a line developer, and looking at other games and how those work. So having said that, I'll go ahead and end that. Thanks again for watching. Once again, I'm Lunar Crafton Jr., aka Zorval John Less Than Guru, and until next time, I will catch you later.